What I want to do today is react to an article in The Atlantic that's going the rounds, that's making the rounds, and the article is titled, "Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty." The byline underneath it is, "We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID," by Emily Oster. So here goes. In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I'd made myself. We had a family hand signal, which the person in the front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our masks. Once, when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, "Social distancing." These precautions were totally misguided. No kidding. And a bunch of us knew that back then. Excuse me. In 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. This is in The Atlantic. Our cloth masks, made out of old bandanas, wouldn't have done anything anyway. Whoa. But the thing is, we didn't know. But should they have? I've been reflecting on this lack of knowledge thanks to a class I'm co-teaching at Brown University on COVID. We've spent several lectures reliving the first year of the pandemic, discussing the many important choices we had to make under conditions of tremendous uncertainty. Some of these choices turned out better than others. To take an example close to my own work, there's an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the U.S. were closed for too long. Hey, you may tell I've not read this before. This is a first time for me. That schools in the U.S. were closed for too long. No kidding, Sherlock. The health risks of in-school spread were relatively low, whereas the cost to students' well-being and educational progress were high. The latest figures on learning loss are alarming. But in spring and summer 2020, we had only glimmers of information. It's not true. There were more than glimmers of information. There were spotlights of information that were censored. Make a distinction. It's not like there was no light down here in the cavern. We got lost in the cavern, right? And someone says, "I've got a flashlight." Whenever you take it out, we'd punch them in the mouth. Reasonable people who cared about children and teachers, advocated on both sides of the reopening debate. Yeah, but what were the reasonable people who cared about children and teachers who wanted to open? What were they called? What was done to them? Another example, when the vaccines came out, we lacked definitive data on the relative efficacies of the Johnson & Johnson shot versus the mRNA options from Pfizer and Moderna. The mRNA vaccines have won out. But at the time, many people in public health were either neutral or expressed a J&J preference. This misstep wasn't nefarious. It was the result of uncertainty. It was also the result of a savage commitment to censorship of any alternative views. In other words, you can't say, well, we were in the dark, when you disallowed, censored, deplatformed anybody who offered to show you a light. Obviously, some people intended to mislead and made wildly irresponsible claims. Remember when the public health community had to spend a lot of time and resources urging Americans not to inject themselves with bleach? That was bad. Still is. It still is to represent it that way. Misinformation was and remains a huge problem, but most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society. No, they were working in earnest for continued control. They wanted to control. The last thing in the world they wanted was an honest, fair, medically sourced debate. One of the things I want you to remember is how fast an orthodoxy developed back then. An orthodoxy on what the best medical treatment for this new epidemic, this pandemic, an orthodoxy developed and hardened within weeks. And lifelong professionals in the medical field were deplatformed, censored, and gagged when they tried to dissent. That part of it was not an innocent mistake. I don't fault anybody for not knowing what was what when the thing first broke. The issue is what you were committed to and still are committed to when it comes to how do we find out what the truth is. Given the amount of uncertainty, almost every position was taken on every topic. And on every topic, someone was eventually proved right, and someone else was proved wrong. And the people who were proved wrong were the censors, and the people who were proved right were the people who were censored. I'm going to keep coming back on that, and I'm going to jump up and down on it. I might even soak it with lighter fluid and set it off. In some instances, the right people were right for the wrong reasons. In other instances, they had a prescient understanding of the available information. And they also had a commitment to getting information. The people who got it right for whatever reason may want to gloat. Those who got it wrong for whatever reason may feel defensive and retrench into a position that doesn't accord with the facts. All of this gloating and defensiveness continues to gobble up a lot of social energy and to drive the culture wars, especially on the internet. These discussions are heated, unpleasant, and ultimately unproductive. I don't think they're unproductive. I think it's going to fuel a lot of what's going to happen in the midterms, but that's a separate thing. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck. No, it had a hefty element of a commitment to free and untrammeled debate, which one side had and the other side didn't have. And similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. No, it was the censoring that was the moral failing. It's not a moral failing to believe something about a virus. It is a moral failing to not let the other side talk. Treating pandemic choices as a scorecard on which some people racked up more points than others is preventing us from moving forward. But the issue is not pandemic choices. The issue is censorship choices. That's the issue. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty. Now, I'm fine with declaring a pandemic amnesty. Think what you want about COVID and love your brother, whatever he thinks about COVID. Not willing to declare a censorship, deplatforming amnesty. Not willing for that. We can leave out the willful purveyors of actual misinformation while forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge. Yes, but one of those hard choices was not whether to censor a dissenting view. Los Angeles County closed its beaches in summer 2020, lest a COVID virus wash in from the ocean. Ex post facto, this makes no more sense than my family's masked hiking trips. But we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. We need to forgive the attacks too. Because I thought schools should reopen and argued that kids as a group were not at high risk, I was called a teacher killer and a genocidaire. It wasn't pleasant, but feelings were high. And I certainly don't need to dissect and rehash that time for the rest of my days. Moving on is crucial now because the pandemic created many problems that we still need to solve. And yes, one of the central ones is the apparatus of censorship that has been set up and defended and is still being defended. Student test scores have shown historic declines, more so in math than in reading, and more so for students who were disadvantaged at the start. We need to collect data, experiment, and invest. Is high-dosage tutoring more or less cost-effective than extended school years? Why have some states recovered faster than others? We should focus on questions like these because answering them is how we will help our children recover. Many people have neglected their health care over the past several years. Notably, routine vaccination rates for children for measles, pertussis, etc. are way down. Rather than debating the role that messaging about COVID vaccines had in this decline, we need to put all our energy into bringing these rates back up. Pediatricians and public health officials will need to work together on community outreach, and politicians will need to consider school mandates. And the reason for this, one of the central reasons for this, is the public health institution, our public health officials, hospitals, doctors, disgraced themselves during this period of time. They disgraced themselves, and you can't chase all the people away, destroying their trust in your institution, and then just snap your fingers and expect that trust to automatically return. Somebody needs to say, we screwed up. When your husband of 50 years died in the hospital alone because you wouldn't let a spouse come in, who needs to own that? Who needs to own the fact that the lockdowns and the masking and the vaccines have done far more damage than the virus? The standard saying is that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, but dwelling on the mistakes of history can lead to a repetitive doom loop as well. But she's talking as though the central mistake here was a mistake about the virus. That was not the central mistake. The central mistake was the role of the state. The central mistake was the propriety of censorship. The central mistake was the commitment to gagging and discrediting and getting critics fired. That was the central mistake. The victim here was freedom. The victim was liberty. We were not allowed to debate ivermectin. We were not allowed to debate hydroxychloroquine. We were not allowed to, not allowed. Shut up, they explained. That's the thing. That's the thing that we need to all together agree was the lesson. We cannot settle public debates, public controversies by means of censorship. So if you were a Martian that came down from Mars in the middle of the pandemic and you didn't know anything about viruses, you would not know who was correct about the disease. You would not know who was correct about the infections. You would not know that. But you would know which side was not letting the other side talk. And that's something that some people still don't know. In the byline underneath this title, we need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. Yeah, forgiveness is possible, and I would be all about healing on this issue. I'd be all about forgiveness being sought and extended. But in order to receive forgiveness, you have to name the sin. You have to name what the problem was, and you have to name it accurately. If a husband was caught cheating on his wife, and he came back to seek forgiveness from her, and let's say she caught him at a restaurant with another woman, he couldn't come back to her and say, yeah, babe, I'm sorry about charging more on that dinner than we agreed to on our credit card limit. That's not what the problem was. The problem was that he was there with another woman. He can't gloss over the central problem by pretending that the problem was something else. So yeah, forgiveness, yes. But forgiveness for what? I'm prepared to forgive totalitarians, but they have to repent of being totalitarians. A big part of the NQN season, apart from silver bells and mistletoe, is our practice of giving away free stuff. So at the bottom of every NQN post, as in like right here, keep your eyes peeled for the current offers, whatever they might be. 1. This week's links to free Kindles are Decluttering Your Marriage and Rules for Reformers, Amazon affiliate links. 2. This November, anyone can get 1 free month of Canon Plus with code NQNQ. That's for No Quarter November Quinquennial. This is our 5th year of doing this. This includes current monthly subscribers, but sorry, it doesn't work for annual subscriptions. We have a lot of post-mill work to do yet. If you do this, you will be able to watch my new documentary over Thanksgiving and to do so for free. The name of the doc is How to Save the World in 11 Simple Steps. 3. This November, current subscribers can give a year's subscription of Canon Plus for just $50, $49.99 instead of $95.88. That way you can get that pastor, friend, or enemy the Canon Plus content they've been so wishing for. 4. And in addition to all of that, from my quaint little Mablog shop, for those same days, November 1 through 5, my little book on the economics of N.T. Wright is available for free. The title of that one is N.T. Wright Rides a Pale Horse. And of course, it should go without saying that all the links necessary are in the description.